live in Bristol in the United Kingdom by May Dorricott. So she is a marine biologist, an ocean explorer, a science communicator whose 2017 Rolex scholarship allowed her to travel the entire world in pursuit of amazing stories on the oceans, understanding the wildlife there, the threats facing them, and more. She's been with us several times before. We're always thrilled to have May back. And without further ado, I'll turn it over to her to share her story. Thanks so much for joining us, May, and take it away.
Thank you very much, and thank you everyone for having me and joining us on Oceans Week. As you'll come to realize, I love the sea, so celebrating it is amazing for me. So I'm going to share my screen and get on with the presentation, so there's lots of time for you to ask me loads of questions. So I do this, now you can see Jessie again, and we're going to say goodbye to Jessie, and we're going to open up this presentation now. So my presentation is called Becoming a Storyteller of the Sea. And basically what I've always wanted to do is be in the ocean as much as possible, learn about it, and be able to share that with everyone else because I love it so much. And my journey began when I was really small. This is a picture of me in between my auntie and my uncle when I got to visit them in Malaysia. And as you can see, I'm a bit of an eager beaver. I love to just get in the water, snorkel around, and be in the sea as much as possible. And I remember asking my teacher when I was around 14 years old, I was like, Mr. Holsaw, is there a job where you can spend as much time in the sea as possible? And he said, yeah, May, that's a marine biologist. So from that point onwards, I always wanted to become a marine biologist. Fast forward a couple of years later, and I had graduated from Plymouth University with a first class degree in marine biology, and it was amazing. It was everything I wanted it to be, but I kind of was a bit worried that I'd never really had real world experience as a marine biologist. I already was a scuba diver, so I was like, how can I combine these two to really make my dream come true of exploring the oceans? I then stumbled across this thing, the Our World Underwater Scholarship Society, which is based in America, and it offers 3 individuals a year a scholarship where they sponsor you for a whole year to travel around the world, scuba diving wherever you wanted to go, and learn from people who you wanted to learn from. That could have been engineers or medical people. And in my case, I wanted to learn from other marine biologists and other ocean explorers. So I got to travel all around the world. I went to 17 different countries. I spent around 200 hours underwater. I got to learn different scuba diving techniques, from using a rebreather, which I'll come onto a little bit later, from diving really remote reefs, going to places which were really cold. And I got to dive with sharks all around the world, like great white sharks, and here is a bull shark. And I also got to do stuff like cave diving, going into places underneath our feet and being able to explore that watery realm. But like I said, I wanted to learn from marine biologists who have been doing this for a very long time. And I came across this lady here in this photo. Her name is Dr. Sonia Rowley, and she is an amazing marine biologist. And I was invited by her to this place called Micronesia, which is in the middle of the Pacific. It's kind of in between Hawaii and the Philippines, right in that big blue expanse. And there, what we were doing was using scuba diving to explore a zone that's really hardly explored. So from this graph, you can see the top reef, which most scuba divers explore, with lots of fish and lots of life. But normal scuba can only take you down to around 50 meters, around 165 feet. And then people who like to go in submarines go really, really deep, down to 150 meters, 500 feet. But this middle zone here, what we call the twilight zone, is really unexplored. And by using a special scuba diving technique called rebreathers, we can go down to these depths and explore what lives here. And these are the things that really dominate these middle reefs, these twilight zones, and these are called gorgonians. And Sonia studies these, and every single dive, when she goes down all that way, she'll find new species on every single dive. New animals, totally novel to science because no one ever goes down there. So it was really cool to be part of her expedition. And this is me diving around 30 meters, not too deep, but still quite deep, on one of these rebreathers. And you can see there's no bubbles, and it allows us to stay down for around 3 to 6 hours at a time underwater. And here I'm laying out a transect line to collect these things on the bottom of the screen called sponges, and trying to find out what animals live in and amongst these beautiful, beautiful reefs. And they were really remote and really beautiful. However, what we noticed was that the reefs weren't exactly that healthy. They'd been hit by something called coral bleaching when the water temperatures get a little bit too high, a little bit too hot, and the corals don't like it. And if it lasts for too long, they eventually die. And as you can see here, this is a reef that has slowly died and slowly grown into just kind of rock. And what you can also see is that because there's no corals, there's no fish. And that's a bad thing. But when we talked to the people who we were living with out here in Micronesia, the people who were taking us out on the boats, they didn't realize that that's what their reefs looked like because they couldn't scuba dive like we could underneath the water and really assess the situation. They were just wondering why there were no more fish to catch. But we could try to explain to them this is what's happening. And this kind of made me realize how I like to share with people the science, not just do it ourselves and keep it amongst the scientific community, but share it with the people who it really matters to. So this led me to do some underwater photography because I believe that if I could take a picture of what was going on underneath the water, all these amazing life from bountiful reefs of fish to wrecks to squid. If I could show people what was underneath the water with a photo, maybe they'd be engaged enough to learn a little bit more about how these animals live their lives. And I've been able to capture some really cool things, especially some really tiny things. Now, I bet, well, yeah, I'm going to put this out there that most of you won't know what this is or didn't even know it exists, but it's a flying snail called a pteropod, which lives in the big expanse of the water. In that empty blue, these guys thrive. And I loved capturing things like this and showing it to my friends and family and people who I get to speak to about all this wonderful life that lives in the sea. But what I could also take with photography were photos that weren't so good. And this was a photo that I took in Indonesia in a place called Lembeh of a little fish using this plastic bag, a little piece of a plastic bag, as shelter. And it wasn't the only place during my scholarship which I saw plastic. This was back in Micronesia with Sonia, and what had happened was that a turtle had washed up on a beach, and we dissected the turtle and cleaned out its stomach, and we found all of these plastic pieces in its stomach. This was when I went to Baja, California, a place called La Paz, which is really famous for its whale sharks. But what they do, this is a really big fishing port as well, and they use big nets made out of plastic, and unfortunately they get abandoned and left out to sea. And what you can see here is a whale shark being pulled into the beach because unfortunately this whale shark was dead and it was floating around because it had been caught in one of these abandoned fishing nets, which doesn't degrade down. And unfortunately it drowned in that fishing net, and this is us trying to pick it up and take it away. But you don't have to go to all these fancy places to see plastic. This was from a beach clean in England, and we walked along the beach and we found all of this plastic. And what you'll notice is that this isn't stuff that you don't see. This is stuff that you see every single day. Sweet packets, forks, straws. I think there's even some Nerf gun pellets here. And the bottle tops and bottles and McDonald's cup, all of this stuff was found on a beach. And what we see is that 70% of the stuff we find on beach cleans are stuff that we use once and then throw it away. This is what we called single-use plastic. And There is no away when it comes to the oceans. We're all connected. And something that you may throw away, use once and throw away, will last forever. And it lasts so long that it gets broken down into smaller and smaller pieces and drifts around the ocean. And one of my final projects I got to do was join a team that does deep sea science. And what they did was they used an ROV, a little submarine, to go all the way down to 6,000 meters deep to explore a trench which no one had ever been to. And when they scooped up a bit of mud from the sea bottom, they sieved it through and found all of this plastic. At 6,000 meters, where no one had ever been to before, plastic had made its way there first. So this led me to, well, I finished my scholarship year around this time last year, and I wanted to complete my master's in science communication. But there was this big question looming over me of, how do other people see plastic? I had been able to travel around the world and see plastic in all of these different places, but I wondered, how did others see it too? So I did a little bit of a scientific survey and looked at what had been happening in the media through a newspaper analysis. This is getting a little bit sciencey here. And what I noticed is that over time there had been peaks and troughs in how much plastic was mentioned in the media, in television, and in the newspaper. And there had been peaks when people really talked about it. And then once it kind of faded from people's minds, it kind of drifted and no one really did anything. And then Blue Planet 2 came out and everyone started talking about it again. And then I tried to ask people, how do you rank your knowledge of plastic pollution compared to other ocean issues? Because plastic pollution isn't the only thing affecting the oceans. We've got coral bleaching, like I said before. There's something called ocean acidification and overfishing and sea level rise. And people seem to rank their knowledge of plastic pollution much higher than all of the other things. And a lot of people said that they felt strongly about how plastic impacted the environment, 68.3%. And a lot of people, 86.4%, really felt that marine life was affected by plastic. But surprisingly, only 33.3% felt that they were worried about their own health when it came to plastic pollution. And then I kind of looked at, if people did change their behavior in terms of single-use plastic or how they used plastic in their day-to-day lives, what caused them to change that? And some people said it was watching Blue Planet 2. And other people were like me, and they saw that when they'd been surfing and they saw it on beaches, that made them change their mind, or when they were scuba diving. And then other people said, like, when they saw a plastic straw stuck in a turtle's nose on Facebook, that really wanted to change their mind. But an also big one was that when people shared amongst their community with their friends and their families and shared their concerns of plastic pollution, that's what made them want to change their behavior. But an important thing that I came across when I was doing my master's was this quote here, that it's not enough for people to know about an issue in order to be engaged, but they also need to care about it and be motivated enough to be able to take action. And that's what I'm working on now, is not just kind of doing the science or talking about it, but making people really care about it and make them see that it's going to impact them. So one thing I'm doing is working with a charity called Plastic Pollution Awareness and Action Projects. And this is based in Bristol, here where I'm staying. And what we're doing is tackling the curry industry and takeaway pots, because how many takeaways are done every single day using these pots? So what we want to do is help engage people who utilize these to change their habits. And what we did was a couple of little brainstorming sessions with people from restaurants as well as charities to try and get that conversation going about how we can all collaborate together to make a change. But another big thing I'm doing is an online campaign with the Marine Diaries. And this is something that I'm doing with a couple of my friends. And we've got a Plastic Not Fantastic campaign going for this month, especially including in Oceans Week. And you can find us on Instagram at the Marine Diaries, or you can go online to themarinediaries.com. And if we've got time, this is our website. And I'm going to play you this really quick video to show you what we've got going on, if it works. Here we go.
So we can see it, but May, if there's audio, we can't hear it. Just
Oh.
to let you know. There we go.
Join us, the Marine Diaries, next month as we walk you through the current state of the plastic problem. We explain how plastic is affecting every ocean creature, from microscopic plankton to the biggest animal on the planet, as well as the top apex predator, us. Covering the main offenders from our daily lives of food packaging, beauty and healthcare, and clothing, the Marine Diaries will be helping you every step of the way towards achieving a plastic-free lifestyle. From myth busting to product reviews and featuring organisations dedicated to tackling plastic pollution, stay tuned for Plastic Not Fantastic, brought to you by the Marine Diaries.
Wicked. So that's something that I'm working on at the moment with a couple of my friends, and we've got this blog going on which is going to mention lots of different things to do with plastic, and we've got other videos too which are going through how you can change things in your day-to-day lives to really combat this issue together with us. But my main job, after doing all of that, is I work in TV. And you might have heard at the beginning, I work at a place called Plimsoll Productions, and we're currently working on an ocean giant series. Now, I can't tell you too much because we're still filming. But what I mainly do is the thing that I've always wanted to do is tell stories of the ocean through film. And hopefully sprinkle a little bit of conservation in there too, but it's mostly an entertainment show. So this was when we were in Panama 2 weeks ago, filming some amazing things, but I can't tell you just yet. But it's going to be released on Animal Planet next year, so we'll see how that goes. So that's my main job at the moment. So that's everything from me. I hope I've given you a scope of the amazing range of life that lives in the ocean and the amazing things that scientists are doing and the places that you can see. But also mostly focusing on plastic pollution and that how, everyone can do their part to make a difference.